Good morning, everyone. This is Mariah from Holy Creative, and we're back this week with our Mojo A Go-Go Writers Workshop, Dancing with the Elements. And this week, we're going to be looking at air element. Welcome so much. I'm glad that we're back together. Go ahead and type in the chat bar and let us know that you're here. And just tell us one wonderful thing about your writing this week. Maybe something that you achieved or something you felt good about. That would be fantastic. We'll just take a moment to get everyone here on the same page. Kathy's here and Chris is here. Welcome, guys. I'm pretty sure it looks like Melissa and Stephanie are also on our live call today. If you guys would just type in one thing that was an achievement or that you felt good about your writing. And it could just be that you felt good about not writing. Maybe you were relaxing this week. So go ahead and get that started. And then just sit back in your chair. Feel your back supported by the back of your chair. Put both feet on the ground. Feel your legs connected to your feet and your feet supporting the rest of your body. So just kind of get planted there. Wonderful. So today, as we look at air element, we're actually going to start by connecting with our physical self and getting grounded. So as we're feeling this sense of plantedness with our feet on the ground, go ahead and feel what it's like to allow your feet to relax just in the embrace of gravity against the ground. And we're going to bring the attention up through the body next to the ankles, feeling the ankles relaxed and supported by the feet, held by the earth. Letting go of any tension that might be in the calves, in the knees, allowing them to soften just a little bit more. Feeling the thighs connected to your chair, the hips resting in your seat, sit bones connected and grounding you further. Relaxing all the muscles around the buttocks and the hips, allowing the lower back to feel supported by the relaxed energy of the lower body and by the back of your seat, which is offering its support as well. Leaning into that support, feeling the internal organs supported and relaxed. Mid-back, upper back, feeling relaxed and supported. The throat and the shoulders, the neck, relax and soften just a little bit more. Allow those shoulders to melt away from your ears. Feel the arms, relaxed hands, open, maybe a little more spaciousness in the grip of your hand where you're feeling a softening. Nothing to reach for or to attempt, just softening into the moment. Maybe swallow and feel the jaw muscles relax and soften. the muscles around the face. Maybe float up into a little gentle smile. Eye muscles relax and soften. And the muscles of the scalp relax and soften. We're going to take a 3-part breath, which has a 4-count inhale, a 7-count hold, and an 8-part exhale. So as we breathe together, just know that this is not about gulping breath or forcing the breath in any way. So go ahead and empty out the contents of your lungs and then exhale. And then we'll inhale together. 1, 2, 3, 4, and hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And now just let the breath come naturally, paying attention to how you feel now that you've done that breathing exercise. Does the body feel slightly more energized or slightly more relaxed? Maybe it's a combination of both relaxed and energized, which is ultimately our best state for getting our writing done. So I'm really excited about talking to you today about air element. And as we look at air element today, we're going to look a little bit at how the elements have worked together and how they're different, so that there's a little bit more of a holistic focus as we go today, even though we're looking mostly at air element. We connect with the air element in the sky and in the wind, in smoke, such as something you would see rising from a candle flame or a fire, or from incense, and the breath, speech, atmosphere, and we also find its energy in space and spaciousness, in mental activities such as imagining, dreaming, thinking, and those things that inspire us to expand, adventure, and experiment. So we're going to look at that a little bit today, but we're also going to look at, whereas earth and water were passive and receptive qualities, fire and air are both active and projective. As we have gone through the workshop, each of the elements has become more subtle and faster moving. Also, where earth governed the tribe and water governed the dyads, that is the relationship between two things, fire governed the individual and the ego self. Air governs universals, the collective unconscious, and archetypes. So we're going to look at how those function today. So in addition to the obvious elements, or I should say the more obvious elements of air, which I discussed already, the sky, wind, breath, speech, and atmosphere, we're also going to look at things such as metaphoric thinking and deriving universals from specifics. We're going to look at how symbols, metaphors, archetypes all are in the realm of air and can serve our writing. So anything that requires you to take a leap and to let go into a space where you are untethered and uncertain is all the energy of air. So we're going to start with the breath, and today was the first day that I really incorporated into that opening series of meditation and just getting ourselves together on the same page, where I incorporated some breath work, and I wanted you to sense how it is different as you get that breath going, or as you start to harness the breath. If you felt a change in working with the breath in that three-part breath, go ahead and type it into the chat bar. Anything that you might have felt that was different for you, or better or worse. So just something that you noticed, perhaps. Breath, of all the elements, is really the most essential to life. I can take away your food, which is earth element, and I can take away your water, right? And those things you're going to be okay with for, well, in the case of water, for many hours. Or food, you can even go many days without food. But breath, you're pretty much going to be in peril within several minutes of having the breath restricted. So we look at breath being the thing that really connects our physical existence with our spiritual existence. When we look to Judeo-Christian mythology, God breathes life into humanity, which he made of earth, right? So it's like this idea that we inhabit these bodies with our spirits, and breath is the thing that bridges the physical and the spiritual. We see this in the word respiration. The word spirare is the Latin word meaning spirit. Conspire, which is related, means to breathe with. And embedded in this word is the idea that you are so like-minded with someone else in your goals, your ideas, that you are actually breathing together. So think about that for the idea to conspire. So breath is uniting the spirit and the mundane. And it's a wonderful way to start our creative processes, since it is doing these things of connecting the spirit and the mundane. An awareness of it is a wonderful way to start a creative process, which for me is also my spiritual process. So when I come into my writing, I start just as I do with you in this workshop, where I connect physically to my body. I allow myself to ground and to center. I may offer up some words of asking for guidance and thanks for the guidance. And then I start with the breath. So, and the breath is what helps get me into that creative and inspired space. So breath by its nature, because it's increasingly subtle, it can't be seen. And so the images here that I've selected, of course, are demonstrating the breath in what is carried in the breath. So something interesting to note, as I've done this, I've brought science into this. So I wanted to anchor this, the breath work, so it's not so airy, that it is grounded in something specific. And science is my go-to for this, because rational minds love facts. They love something tangible and concrete. So for those of you who like this stuff, we have that for you. And for those of you who just want to feel good and kind of airy and spacious, we've got that today too. But I've talked about the breath before and what happens when we go into fight or flight response. If you'll remember, I talked about this in Earth Element initially. When we are surprised or frightened, or when we're under chronic stress, because if we are under chronic stress, our body gets trapped in this fight or flight response. We go into the sympathetic nervous system and our pulse quickens, our muscles constrict, and blood is directed away from the non-emergency systems of our body. But when we're relaxed, well, I should say our breath in those states is a fast breath and a shallow breath. So it's meant to pump a lot of oxygen in a short amount of time. If we are in that state, right, our muscles are ready for action and we're ready to flee, it's not the ideal conditions for our creativity. What we're trying to get into is, for our creative well-being, is getting into a state of relaxation where our breathing is slower and our deeper and our pulse is slower. And the systems that are not necessary for survival can come back online, right? So if you think about it this way, we are not going to be able to be creative and to imagine and dream and create if our bodies are sensing that we're under a threat where we're going to need to mobilize and run. So one of the things that happens is as we get into our daily lives, we can get into this list of things to do and a sense of urgency, or worse than a sense of urgency, because often a sense of urgency will put us in action. Worse than that is a state of anxiety where we feel there are so many things asking for our attention that we aren't even sure where to start, and we go into the third and less talked about phase of fight or flight, which is freeze. So fight, flight, or freeze is what happens in this state of stress. And freeze is not talked about very often. Frequently, we see this in places where people cannot fight or flee. So this would be instances where someone was trapped somewhere, or so that might be physically trapped, or it could be, for instance, if your back is up against a wall and you can't run, or if you're trapped like World War II, you saw veterans come back with PTSD because they were trapped in a foxhole, they couldn't run or fight. Or you see this frequently with children, right? So they're dependent upon adults and they can't leave frequently abusive or dysfunctional homes. So we also sense this in our life, like if there are demands made of our lives where we can't run from them, where perhaps we've taken on so many things because our lives have demanded it for financial reasons, or because there are a lot of humans demanding things of us, whether they're students or coworkers or children. But we get into this sense of there's a lot of demands being made on us, and we can get into this fight, flight, or freeze pattern. And so it's essential, if you want to create, that you be able to find the breath and work with the breath in order to calm the body and to calm the anxiety. Now, as we go through some of these other slides, you'll see that they're all very much connected in a way that comes back to how the breath works in the body. What I am going to suggest is this, that you just pay attention to your breathing as we go through this particular workshop. And are you breathing deeply, and are you breathing relaxed in a relaxed way? And if you're not, if something starts to restrict your breath, Pay attention to what was that came up for you. And don't try to force the breath. One of the things that I've learned in my yoga practice is that breath is guru, and guru is the word for teacher. So if my breathing is restricted and it's telling me I'm afraid, my breath is teaching me something about my relationship with the perceived threat. And I begin to learn, for instance, if I'm doing a pose that in my physical yoga practice, which we call asana, if I'm doing a pose that is particularly painful, either because I've had an injury or there's some restriction, something impinging upon my freedom and my feeling of well-being, that I recognize, oh, look, I'm holding my breath. And that I allow myself to honor that. Oh, wow, this hurts. And what can I do to take care of that? Maybe I can take a deep breath instead of holding my breath and letting my body know that although it is uncomfortable, that I'm not actually under any real threat, right? So think about when you're trying to hold still so someone doesn't find you, or if you're really scared, you might hold your breath, right? So just paying attention to the breath and what it's trying to teach you is a really important part of a holistic writing practice. So I want to invite you just to start bringing awareness, maybe in this webinar, if this is the first time you're really working with breath, or in your daily life, like carry this into what you're doing daily and just noticing where you are feeling restricted and what that quality of breath is like for you. Now, as we move forward in looking at how breath and air manifests, I should say air element manifests in our writing lives, one of the aspects is spaciousness. And I love these images of space because they connect me physically with a felt experience of space, right? And so in one image, I feel like I'm floating, untethered, boundless, right? And just kind of no restrictions and no movement, right? When we get up into space, there's no wind. And then the other image of the cartwheeling, I like this image as well because instead of just floating, it feels active to me, and an intentional movement through space and the willingness to open into that space. So as we breathe, we are physically creating spaciousness in the body. As we inhale, all those little intercostal muscles between the ribs open and expand. The collarbones broaden, right? The shoulders may come up because at the top of the inhale, we can get just a little bit extra air in there if we lift the shoulders. So all the apparatus, all that breathing apparatus actually becomes expanded with the inhale, and we can use the inhale to help create spaciousness in the body. And then as we exhale, we can move energetically into the spaces that we have created with the inhale. So the idea that there's this floating kind of bobbing sensation of lifting in the inhale and sinking into the exhale, where you're energizing in the inhale and expanding and resting and coming into spaciousness of a relaxed nature into the exhale, really is something that literally and physiologically can happen for you with working with the breath. Now, spaciousness, Eckhart Tolle spends a lot of time in The Power of Now talking about the breath and about spaciousness in particular. Okay, if you haven't availed yourself of some of Eckhart Tolle's wisdom, you might check some of that out. I listened to it for the first time when I moved to California back in 2010. And I have found myself returning to his ideas over and over again. And one of the things that he suggests is finding the spaciousness in whatever feels contracted. So, or something that we're rejecting. So contraction is a no, right? You're pulling away from something. When we find an experience unpleasant, we say no to it, we contract against it, we kind of back up from it. And when we're in that state of reactivity, we have no space. You think about muscles contracting, right? They're pulling together. There is no spaciousness. And so part of developing a juicy, good writing process and a juicy, good writing life is to come out of this state of contraction and to stop reacting, right? Stop getting in this contracted no, 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 and beginning to say yes. So some of this, you'll see we're pulling again on some of the things we learned in water element, this receptivity, right? So as I said, we're starting to integrate the some of the lessons of the other elements as we integrate all these experiences and elements into air element. So this idea that having expectations is helpful only insofar as we can set, as it allows us to go to earth element. So I have expectations, let's say, that the sun will come up tomorrow, so I will make a plan. I have expectations that there will still be food in the refrigerator when I go back to it, right? That way I'm not having to continually run to the grocery store, continually check the refrigerator. So some of these expectations serve us. But when our expectations, and this might be our expectations of ourselves, right? When our expectations create a contraction, right? Oh, that poem or that writing didn't come out the way I wanted it to. And then we contract against it, basically saying no to ourselves or to that piece of writing. We're not creating spaciousness. So part of this is, can we allow room for things to exist in the way that they are existing? And then we're going to see as we move into another quality of air element that we are actually going to move into, oops, I got a little out of order here. There, I want to go to this slide next. I apologize, guys, for getting a little out of order. Getting from this contraction into a clearer kind of thinking. So there are many kinds of thinking, and thinking is in the realm of air element. So whereas earth was about our physical existence and water was about our emotional existence and fire was about our energetic existence, air element is all about our mental existence, okay? And so we come into the realm of thinking. And I love this particular slide because it shows a couple aspects of the mind and of thinking. And so if you look at the element of air as a way to get your best thinking, your clearest thinking, rather than continuous thinking that never shuts off. So I delivered a paper at the Rocky Mountain Modern Language Association just a couple years ago. And this was to a group of academics and academic writers. And part of what I identified was that in the Western mind, right, in our mindset, Descartes, so the Western thought frequently invokes Cartesian thinking. So this is related to Descartes. And his philosophy was predicated on the idea, I think, therefore I am. Okay, so this idea of thinking being what defines us, which is problematic because it attaches us to the thinking mind in such a way that the idea of suspending thought feels like you're missing an opportunity to contribute to who you are. And especially for academics, intellectuals, and writers, the idea, we can get attached to the idea like, oh, I'm thinking all the time. My mind is always on the go, and I'm a quick thinker, and these ideas of the more you think, the more you are, right? That is actually a dysfunctional relationship with your thinking. Your thinking also deserves to rest. So the image of this brainstorm, I really like, because I feel like sometimes, and if I can get an amen to this, sometimes I have felt like I can't shut my brain up. You might experience this while you're trying to sleep and your brain is just going a mile a minute and thinking of all the things that you're trying to do. If this is you, go ahead and type into the chat bar some of the problems that you might have had with brainstorms like this, whether it's at night, it keeping you from sleeping, or maybe it's you've got so many things going on in your mind that you're unable to even get started. So if you've experienced a brainstorm like this, let me know. And if you can relate to this idea of, I think, therefore I am, therefore the more I think, the more I am, and any reluctance to let go of the thinking self. So is there some resistance to that? So yeah, if you're like Kathy and you're a constant mental whirling dervish, you probably are naturally very air. Smart people, I hate to break it to you guys, are going to have some problems with this because by our nature, we are mentally driven and we have lots of energy. Remember, air element people are, they're movers. The fastest moving of the elements is air. So know that if you're air and you have a lot of demands on yourself, which is going to require a lot of fire, that the combination of air and fire is going to create a fast burn and it's going to burn you out. So if you're experiencing these things, it means that you're normal. So, I mean, you're also exceptional, but you're also normal. So Stephanie too says that she's relied too heavily on her thinking self, believing that it's more valid, more important than the needs of the body. And this is something that, and especially if your mind is one of the strong points, right? So if you're in academia or if you're in writing as a way of making a living or as a way of being in the world, it's going to seem counterintuitive to let go of the thinking mind, okay? But I am here to promise you that if you can allow the thinking mind to relax, that you're going to get better and clearer thinking as you move forward. And the way to do this is with the breath. Okay? So if you're trying to solve your problems of the mind with your mind, you are trying to cure your illness with the source of your illness. That is crazy. Okay? So that you can't solve the illness with the source of the illness. So when we go back to the breath, one of the things that I learned as I've been studying yoga and applying it to the creative life, I had a teacher at Loyola Marymount University who taught a class in pranayama, which is working with the breath. And I took a 6-week class in harnessing the breath. One of the things I was taught is that as the turbines of the breath go fast, so if you think of the breath as a turbine, the faster the breath goes, the faster the mind goes. And the slower the breath goes, the more slowly the mind moves. So if you're thinking of breathing as turning a turbine in the mind, and if you think about this, I need to think quickly and problem solve quickly if I'm under stress. I'll need to get quick breaths of air. I'll have to be very alert and look around quickly and quickly problem solve to avoid a perceived threat. If I am relaxed and breathing more slowly and more deeply, right, then the turbines of my mind begin to slow. I can go into that state of relaxation. And this is ultimately where intuition and dreaminess and integrating things that you have already learned will allow for creative thinking. So Chris, always the jester here, says, why be normal when you can have the potential to be excellent? I'm using normal in the realm of saying that, or in the as the definition of meaning that you're healthy and that you are not abnormal, meaning that you're not in dysfunction or illness. So yes, that's why I was saying you can be normal and extraordinary at the same time. So you can be normal and excellent. You can even be extraordinary and normal. But yes, we want to get to this idea of, there's not something wrong with us, which is what I mean when I say normal. Okay, so I am going to move us forward here in which is actually backwards. So one of the things that relaxing the thinking mind does is it opens us up to possibility. The thinking mind is a lot like a machine where it will get a routine or a process, kind of mechanical repetition that works for it, and the brain stays kind of locked into that way of thinking. So there are patterns of mind that we get when we are constantly thinking. And in yoga, they call this samskaras, this idea that the more we think in a certain way, the more we reinforce that habit of thinking. So if you think of it as sort of like brain waves, okay? So this idea like waves on the shore create deposits of sand and sediment and shape the shoreline, right? Well, it's the same thing with our thinking. If we keep thinking, if those waves keep moving in the same way, we're going to get this big buildup of rigid shoreline of thinking, right? And so if we can allow the mind to relax, so working with the breath in order to relax the mind, it actually allows us to move into a realm of new possibilities and new ways of thinking, right? So if we are not able to perceive possibility, then, right, if we're constantly locked in, and how many times in your life have you thought, you know, there's no way around this, or there's no way out of this, or I'm stuck, right? How many times have you been in that place? And then, however far down the line, you know, it might be a month or a week or something, someone says something to you that shifts your way of thinking, and suddenly the possibilities open to you. And the possibility was there the entire time, but it was you recognizing the possibility, the different way of doing things, that was what changed things for you. If something like that has ever happened, will you type it in the chat bar and let me know where you felt stuck or constricted or restrained, and then perhaps something happened to make you see things differently, or someone said something? Just share that with us. So this idea of possibility contains within it this willingness to be between worlds, taking a leap where you're neither, if you're looking at the image there, where you're neither in the water or on the rock, right? You're in the air, you're in between things. There are some of you who are at home in the leap. Like, you can take leaps like a mountain goat. No problem being airborne and suspended between things. Some of this leap taking, okay, is just natural to people's personalities. Sometimes leap taking, like if you know there's a net beneath you or a soft surface, perhaps like water here, taking a leap can feel a lot more comfortable. Like, oh, if I fail, you know, I end up getting wet, but that's okay. Or I end up in the net, I'm afraid of the fall, but I know the net will catch me. So for instance, this becomes sometimes, what is your net? So sometimes your net is, oh, I have a tribe to catch me. So that's very earth element, right? Oh, I have people who will help me to catch me. Or I have money. So money is my safety net. So I know if I totally mess everything up, that I'm still not going to be physically imperiled. I'm not going to smack against the rocks and die because I have a safety net of financial resources. It's a lot harder to leap when you don't have a sense of safety. So we come back to, like, where are you blocked? Why are you not able to take the leap that you feel like you want to take, or you need to take, or you feel like there aren't possibilities? And it may be that you don't have a landing that is safe for you. This may be your innate wisdom trying to protect you. So one of the things that you can look at, for instance, if you decide, I have some coaching options for you guys to help support you after this workshop is over, is I can help you look at what are your resources, because we don't all have independent wealth. We don't all have families. We don't all have the same resources. We don't all have master's degrees in writing. Right? We all have different resources. So the idea is that there is a net there for you. There is something that can create safety, but we just need to find it. Some cases it might be going to the closet and getting out your net, right? Just, oh, I packed it away somewhere and I forgot about it. I forgot about the possibility of that. But it's also getting in touch, this idea of possibility, with things that we might not have honored or in a long time. right? We just shut ourselves down to the possibility. So if you have a pen with you right now, just jot down something I would like to explore is. So just anything. Maybe you want to explore bugs and dirt. I don't know why that just came to me, but bugs and dirt. Or maybe you'd like to explore Catalina Island or India, or you'd like to explore language. You'd like to explore a bagel. I'm really into finding good bagel places. Whatever, just something that really you're like appeals to you. And you might even go back to childhood. Like, what was something that you would love to explore as a child that you would still love to explore now, but you're not doing it anymore? Maybe you'd like to explore the best way to build a living room fort. I have always wondered. What is something you've always wondered? Just jot that down really quickly. Don't spend too much time lingering on this, but something I have always wondered. I am inspired by. What is something that inspires you, or someone that inspires you? Next one, I have always dreamed of. Maybe it's a dream for you. Like, I have always dreamed of having a book reading at the biggest bookstore in New York. I've always dreamed of being featured on the front page of the New York Times. I've always dreamed of having a large house with an amazing 2-story library with a spiral staircase. So something you've always dreamed of. I've always dreamed of having a book signing at Powell's Books in Portland, Oregon, holding a glass of drink or a cup of drinking chocolate while people ask me to personalize my inscriptions on their books, right? What is your dream? A great adventure would be, fill that in, a great adventure would be. And then the last one, a question I want answered is, and write that down, a question I want answered is. There is a quest in every question. So if you have a question you want answered, you have already opened to possibility. You are already on a quest, right? And how wonderful is that, to know that just in asking the question that you have opened yourself to this exploration and this adventure. If there was something that you got out of that writing exercise that you recognized or realized in your dream, go ahead and put that into the chat bar. I'm like you, Stephanie, Rumi poems all often open me up that same way, right? That there's something, that's what the best poetry does, is it touches something in our feeling self that bypasses the mind, right? So we feel it to be true. We connect with the felt experience in such a way that it also resonates in the thinking and knowing mind, right? And so that's what we're going for. And if we can get into the feeling self, which is water, right, and bring that, unite that with the thinking self, which is air, we will see that these things work together. Air and water, coincidentally, are both fluid. So they both work in the same way in vortexes and spirals and waves, interestingly enough. And so that we begin to unite these things in the best writing. Air obviously is the realm of flying. You got to take that leap into the possibility in order to fly, right? And flying takes us places. So not only are we leaping into the possibility, but we have to harness our air element in order to take us places. And so we look at having a brainstorm of the best kind, right? Like where we're thinking like all these thoughts and we're getting them down and we're really in the flow of ideas. Fabulous. But how many times have you had fabulous brainstorm of ideas and then you lost it, right? Like you were so inspired by a symphony or an art exhibit or someone's TED talk, and you got all these great ideas and you were leaping and flying, and then the next thing you know, it's gone. How many times has that happened? It's happened to me quite a few times. And so this idea of if you actually want to arrive somewhere in your flight, if you don't want to be like the recent flight in the news and disappear or crash, then you're going to have to harness this beautiful air energy in a way that serves you so that you have a destination in mind, and that in the instance of the sailboat, that you set your sails and you know how to maneuver them. There's some real, it's not just like, hey, I'm going to fling myself into the air element and hope for the best. Like I'm just going to land in the net. It's like, hey, maybe I get a parasail and I harness this leap and the momentum of falling and I go somewhere. Or maybe I use all this gorgeous brainstorm and I direct it with skill. So the skill is air element. The actual harness is earth element. And so we're starting to look at how, right, so you need the physical manifestation of sails or wings. And if you're a dork like I am, you look at the physics of sailboat sails, you'll notice that like an airplane wing, they are arched and that the way that they are creating lift is similar. So, but right, so if we want to fly, we're going to have to develop our mental acuity, which is not the same thing as brain chatter. So I know there are several of you in this workshops that have advanced degrees in creative writing. So all hail the master's degree and the MFA. Like these things are powerful. But if we're not existing in our earth element, and if we're not cultivating earth in the sense of safety, in our sense of tribe, in our sense of rest, enjoying those fallow times when we're not creating, right? That's all earth element. If we're not just going with the flow and letting our writing feel good, feel sensual, and feel like having a romance with our writing in such a way that, you know when you're in love with someone and they got a big fat zit on their face, you see the zit, but you're so in love that it's like, oh baby, you look wonderful. I love you, right? That's the kind of relationship we're going to cultivate with our writing. If you are one of these people who has cultivated an advanced degree in writing or has really pursued writing from an intellectual standpoint, I'm going to invite you to you probably need to set some of that beautiful genius and the discrimination and the skill aside. So you have those skills, but you're going to just move it over a little bit so you can create room for these other things that are so essential to your writing life. And if you're a person who's really enjoying your writing life and you're connected with the earth and the water elements of your writing life, so you're in your tribe and it feels good and you're enjoying the crap out of it, but your writing's not very good or it's not very skilled. I should say skilled, not good. If it's not very skilled and you don't know quite what you're doing, you're going to need to apply some more air. And congratulations to all of you, because this webinar has looked at all these elements, right? How all these things are going to serve you. And as we look at like how coaching can help you, what I do is I look at, oh, you know what? You really would benefit from some more skill in your writing. So here's some lessons that target skill for you. Or perhaps you're a person who is having trouble letting go of the air and the fire element, and you really need some lessons in how to cultivate breath and meditation. So I can help you with that too. So all these things will help you so that you can go places with your writing, so you can fly, so you can take off and feel good. So air element is also the realm of the conscious mind. The unconscious, you'll see it's below the water, was so the lack of consciousness, or the subconscious, I should say, the subconscious mind is the realm of water. But your awareness is the realm of air. Also, the collective unconscious. So this is a Jungian idea that people in general, like our tribe of humanity, has certain ideas and constructs that exist among all of us that have to do with our felt and intuitive perceptions of the world. So that these are how we tap into psychology, right? So how psychology works from a Jungian perspective is that we are looking at how these, how the collective unconscious impacts us, all right? And I really just included this idea of being aware and of being conscious versus unconscious, which means like asleep and completely unaware, versus subconscious, which is just the part of the mind that we're not aware of. Okay, and so bringing things to the conscious mind from the subconscious, or out of the collective unconscious, not you being unconscious, but the collective unconscious, is part of air element. And we do this by exactly what we've been doing here in the webinar, coming into a state of rest and relaxation so that we can pay attention to how we're feeling. And we can become aware of the physical body and the emotional body, of the energetic body, and bring all these states into our consciousness, right? So that we can harness them and have them serve our creative lives. From the realm of the conscious, of the Jungian kind of aspect here, we're looking at I'm sorry, I just thought I'd lost you guys altogether. We're looking at the archetypes. So when we go from the Jungian into the idea of the collective unconscious, we start to look at how do abstractions and archetypes actually serve us in our writing. So if you've taken writing workshops before, you'll hear people frequently give you the writing advice to stay away from abstractions. right? So don't just say justice, because physically and emotionally, I can't connect with the idea of justice. But if you show me a woman holding her baby and refusing to allow the baby to be split in half among two mothers, and her tearfully handing over her baby as an act of selflessness, where, like, the judge, remember this, the judge says, split the baby in half because the two women were arguing about the babies. So this story of King Solomon and this idea of justice, we embody it in the felt connection of the story of these two mothers, and the one mother loving her child so much that she's willing to give it up or let go. So that act of selflessness. So that is something, that specific story allows us to emotionally connect in a way that serves us in our writing. But the abstract idea, oh, I want to write a story about justice, is air element. Okay, so know that these abstractions are necessary in writing. They are not evil. They're not bad, and you don't want to avoid them. You want to include them as you are looking at universals. So you'll see here on this wheel of archetypes, and I love this. This is a very abstract image, unlike the other images, which were specific, right? Where here's a boy jumping off a cliff into the water, or here's a woman with her arms outstretched, feeling her possibility, right? Here, you have an abstract slide. It's colorful, right? But it is still abstract. We get the idea of freedom versus order. So the idea that these two dyads are opposed to each other, right? So the outlaw is on the freedom side of this wheel, and the ruler enforces order. We have on the social versus ego. So social being more about inclusivity, and the ego being more about the individual. So we have the caregiver on one side and the hero on the other. So these two roles are often at odds with each other, right? The outlaw versus a ruler, or the caregiver versus a hero. It's really hard to be a hero and be a caregiver at the same time, because the hero is going to require you to have a quest and to go out and to, like the hero's journey, you're going to be encountered with a series of trials, and it's hard to do that if you're taking care of the needs of the other people. So you might look at some of these and see where you are, which of these archetypes you identify with. Because it's in these archetypes that you are finding your writer self, right? So I know that, for instance, I'm a teacher. I put myself over here in the sage category, right? A sage is someone who knows everything or knows a lot of things. And so we'll notice that the opposite of the sage is the jester. This is a person who is a fool, who doesn't know anything. I see these two qualities come together in myself, this idea of being a teacher and a joker, all the time. So one of the things for a sage, if you'll think about a person who needs wisdom or who embodies wisdom, the shadow self of the sage, the scary thing for the sage is not knowing, right? So what kind of sage are you? What kind of teacher are you if you don't know the answer? You're a joke. That's the shadow side, right? And so to be in your strength in these things is sometimes to say, hey, that's right, I'm a joke. I'm a funny teacher, right? And so for me, that's how these archetypes are working together, right? And also having the wisdom, the sage wisdom, to know that sometimes humor isn't going to work for me. And sometimes not knowing is going to be a detriment to what I'm doing. But understanding how these two things come together and work. You'll also see that these archetypes will serve you in your writing as you are creating characters or as you're developing ideas in your creative writing. So you might say, hey, this person that I'm writing about really needs, remember I talked about habitual action and character. Oh, this person really falls into one of these archetypes, and explore what that archetype is and explore how the shadow side or the flip side will serve character development. So the same things that apply to you as a human apply to the humans in your stories, okay, and in your poems. So just be aware of these. You can also use these as prompts as a way to launch you into the possibility, right? Well, oh, you know what? I'm going to try writing a poem about a ruler. Funny story, I was working at the library, and this is a long time ago, but a man walked up to me and asked me, I was working at the front desk, and said, do you have a ruler? And I said, no, I'm autonomous. And he looked at me really confused for a moment, and because he was in the library, he was smart enough to get my joke, and he laughed. And we had a grand old time. Okay. So how's everybody doing? You doing anything that you recognized from that little experience with the abstractions and the archetypes? Anything you recognized about yourself or your characters? So we also move here into the realm of the dreaming mind. So allowing ourselves to have daydreams, allowing ourselves to have daydreams. Do you schedule time to dream? Maybe you just go sit out under a tree somewhere and let your mind wander? Or have you relegated that to things I don't have time to do? Because I know that for a long time I was so go, go, go. I was going full-time to school. I was working full-time as a teacher, and I was also working full-time as a writer and a performer doing spoken word. And I remember someone suggesting that I needed a vacation, and the idea of relaxing scared me. I didn't know how to relax. Later on, as I started cultivating a sense of, oh, I don't have to do, like I can actually do nothing. It was a long melting process. I like that Kathy is a daydream believer, but not a homecoming queen. I see that you've got some jester in you there, Carrie. Carrie, what am I saying? Kathy. That carries you well through this world. That idea to, the idea that the foolishness can actually serve you. And yes, feeling foolish is a demon of many of us. And especially, I want for just a moment, those of you who, for whom power feels important. So you know power is important to you if you have an advanced degree or if you've been in a position where you were in charge of other people. Okay, so this idea, it's not personal power, but it's social power. Or if you have this idea that there's some form of leadership and there's some sort of validation that you deserve to be in that leadership position, right? And so appearing foolish for these people is going to be particularly scary or a challenge. So this idea of allowing yourself to dream, I actually did an entire workshop on dream writing. And because we are going into our a little over the hour period now. I am happy if you want that link to the dream writing workshop webinar, let me know and I will share that with you. So I want to let you know that I am offering some coaching for you guys. It's obviously completely optional, but we're coming to the end of our webinar. We'll have our last support call next week, and I don't want you to feel like you're just dropped off the cliff, like you got all this good support and information and then you didn't have any support to keep you in that place of holistic integrated creativity. So check out these, there's offers. I have 2 offers, 2 plans for people depending on what they need or would like. And it's there for you. So you have that there to check out so that you're not just spending your whole summer dreaming, but you're also getting some writing done that you can feel good about. And getting some of that inspiration that will keep you moving forward. So as we finish up today, we're looking at where does that inspiration come from. If you go to the Ning forum, I have put up a bunch of prompts there that people have just been ignoring, which is fine. You ignore them all you like, but they're there if you need inspiration to move you forward in your writing. There's one this week on writing a credo and one on writing an ode to your ruling element. So if there's something, if you just want to play around a little bit and have some fun with your writing, that's there for you. As we finish up today, I'll let you know that if you are very airy, some of the challenges that you may be having are having lots of unfinished projects. So you might need to invoke more fire in order to get things finished, or more earth to set deadlines and goals. You may be very scattered. Either there's stuff all over the place or your thinking is just very scattered. You might be hard to pin down. One of those people that you're not able to, oh yeah, we'll get around to it eventually, and there's a lot of being vague or non-committal. That's a sign you might need to invoke some of those other elements, as well as trouble meeting deadlines, right? It's kind of the same thing. Going in too many directions at once. Listen, brothers and sisters, I get it. Many of us have really busy lives with lots of demands placed on us, but we can move in a healthy, grounded, centered way in those directions in our lives, and intentionally switching directions when it's time. If there are too many abstractions and nothing concrete, this is one of the great things in the coaching program that I offer you guys, is that I will actually look at your writing and let you know, hey, you know what, you're actually not invoking enough universals here. So it's so concrete that people are not able to relate to the universal archetype. Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe it's so abstract that people aren't able to connect emotionally and physically with what it is that you're writing. So these are something that coaching is going to help you with as well. If you're often lost in your thoughts and not in the real world, you've met people like this too, I'm sure, where their feet are not on the ground, which is wonderful if you're flying, but it's not wonderful if you are trying to land, right? So just knowing when it's time for each one of these things. And also knowing if you're too talkative or a bad listener, that might be a sign that you're very air and need to cultivate some more of these other elements in your life. And also if you're easily bored, right? That's a sign you need more mental, that you're looking for more mental stimulus. So this has been our air element workshop today, and I'm so glad that you guys all joined me. I see that you guys got a lot of stuff from each other in the chat bar, which always makes me really happy when I see you guys interacting as a tribe. Let me know if there's more questions. I'll check the chat bar and see who wants the dream writing webinar and send that link on over to you. And I just want to remind you that the breath is guru, right? And so if you keep on just bringing the attention back to your breath, and where is the breath? Am I breathing shallowly? Am I getting it fully into the belly? Am I breathing just up in the chest? And these are also things that I can help you with as we go forward in coaching. So coaching sessions can be on the phone. I'm very flexible, and whether it's a phone or we can do it face-to-face, even virtually online like this, so that I'm able to show you different breathing practices that will help you. If you might not know that I'm a certified yoga instructor and that I teach yoga and writing together. My favorite thing to do is to work one-on-one with people, because everybody's body is different and their writing manifests in their own unique set of challenges, which I find is usually reflected in their body language and in the way that they're physically present in the world. So that this idea that the physical, emotional, energetic, and mind bodies are all acting together, and they're helping or hindering us in our writing. So if there are questions that you have for me, you can always email me at holycreative.com. I'm sorry, that's holycreative@gmail.com. The website is holycreative.com. And let's just finish out with one more breath as we began today, with that 3-part breath. So go ahead and settle back into your seat. Close your eyes. Always helps me get centered. Feel your feet against the ground. Feel your back supported. Exhale. And inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Thank you, everyone. I had a wonderful time with you this week. I will see you next week, or I'll talk to you next week on our support call. Bye for now.